Gear Tasting Radio is brought to you by Imminent Threat Solutions. ITS provides knowledge that empowers individuals with indispensable skill sets to explore the world and prevail against all threats. Right now, as a special thank you for all podcast listeners, we're offering 10% off in the ITS store. Simply use the code GTR to save 10% at store.itstactical.com. Welcome to Gear Tasting Radio, where we offer an in-depth look into the usage and philosophy behind the equipment in our lives. I am joined, as always, by Rob Henderson.
Hello.
And I'm Brian Black. Today, we are going to be talking about a little productivity. So, we're both big fans of getting things done, David Allen's concept for enhancing productivity. And we wanted to delve into... We've talked before about how we've used GTD, so it's not really an episode on how we use GTD, even though we're going to talk a little bit about that. But it's really, it can be intimidating, and if a lot of people, when they get into GTD as a principle or philosophy, they see it as an all or nothing type of task, and it's really not like that. And that's really what we wanted to focus on, is just some simple things that really you may not even associate with GTD that you can do that can help with productivity. So productivity is a huge thing for us, as well as just being organized and knowing knowing what's next is really a big thing too. So that's really what we wanted to talk about and get into a little bit of that, as well as some of the tools that help us do that too. So I know we talked a little bit, Rob, about how there was a recent email that David Allen came out with, and he was talking about that very same thing, where he was saying that you don't have to do everything. It's just, even if you were able to do a small step, it can basically jumpstart other things happening.
Yeah, because I think people have the propensity, especially with stuff like this. I always equate it to like when people do the dieting thing. They'll do really well for a couple weeks or whatever, and then they'll stray off the path a little bit, and then it's just like the wheels come off. So GTD, you have a big propensity to like get your system in order, get everything checked, and then go a couple days without doing it, and then it's so intimidating to jump back in and like, oh, I don't want to look, so you'll put it off. But if you can just slowly chip away at stuff, I find that I think one of the things we talked about is like I'll occasionally have mornings where I'll come in and it's like I got to jump to this thing right now. I don't have time to even look at the calendar or anything like that. But I think you do yourself such a disservice by not at least getting a little bit of stuff in order so that you're working on the most important thing. Because a lot of times for me, that what seems like the most important thing isn't. I'm like, oh, I need to knock this out first. I'm glad I looked.
Sure.
So
yeah, I agree with that too. I think the mornings that I actually force myself or allow myself to spend a little time jotting things down, it makes a world of difference. And I know it's easier said than done.
Sure.
Because I'm guilty of that many mornings where I just jump into something like you said, and I don't even remember where the morning went, and I look up and it's lunchtime. So that's something that happens to me quite often. And what will happen is it'll really cause anxiety because I don't really know what I should be doing, and then I kind of stumble into one thing, and then I look at another, and I'm like, oh, crap, I didn't take care of that because I didn't look at my list or something like that. So I think it really does help, and I try my best to do it the night before. And I don't always capture everything that I need to do the next day the night before, because there's more than likely there's things that I'm just not thinking about, or things that pop up during the day that need to get done too, because there's always those actions that come in that you have to do no matter what. Yeah, it's not really debatable of like, oh, let me just plug that in and I'll schedule a time to do it. It's just it has to happen right then and there because it's immediate. So I don't think we're ever gonna live without that kind of stuff in anybody's life. Sure. So I think the mapping that kind of stuff out beforehand is good. However, just kind of coming back to what we were talking about, this topic being about, is that just small things like even buying a new pen can be something that throws you back onto a path to want to write things down, or let's say you got a new pad or a new notebook for your desk or something like that. So just even purchasing something that's a productivity tool can help kind of foster you going into something like that. So
even cleaning your desk
yes
can just stop you from getting lost in the sauce. You have so much propensity to wander, like you said, and those are the times when it really hits me, is whenever I realize that I've forgotten something that was more important because I didn't look. And it really highlights to me that, I always think of it as like, if a car crash happened outside the office right now, could I spare 5 minutes to go help? It's like, yeah, probably. Yeah. Well, then take those 5 minutes and just go through your calendar and look through stuff.
Right.
Like, it's not going to be the end of the world if you take just 5 minutes.
Yeah, and it's just a simple review can go a long way.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
We talk about this stuff, but I think we're both guilty of not doing it too, and
sure.
I know I am. So,
yeah.
I mean, just to be totally upfront, my OmniFocus right now is horribly disorganized. So, I've got like 54 items in my inbox that still haven't been processed into projects. I've got a projects list that hasn't been updated in probably a month and a half. So we talk about this stuff, but I'm just trying to say that I'm not perfect either.
No.
My thing is that at least it's captured, and that's
right.
If I can do that, I'm so much ahead of forgetful me,
right.
And that's kind of what GTD is a lot about too, is just capturing what has your attention so you can stop paying attention to it. Sure. And that's really that's the thing I do really well.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I would say that is number one for me and what I use the philosophy for the most. Now, however, going back and reviewing those and turning them into projects and figuring out what I have to do next, that takes a lot of time for me. So I'm less likely to do that. I have done that quite a bit. And I still continue to do that. However, the wheels do fall off for a while, and then I'll jump back on because I know that it's really not that big of a deal to process those and get back on track.
Exactly.
However, that's kind of the big deal. If I were to say, if you could take one thing as a concept from GTD, it's just writing things down. It doesn't have to be in a program like OmniFocus that's designed for GTD stuff. It could be a notepad or your to-do list on your phone. Yeah. It doesn't really matter what you put that in, but just capturing it means that you're going to go back and at least look at it at some time. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later, so that thing isn't a pressing item that you
Well, and there's a mental offload that comes from being able to capture. And that's why I think, looking at his book, that's why he spends so much time talking about the capture, because it really is the most important aspect. Because, like you said, if nothing else, if you at least capture it, then, his whole philosophy is like you have a trusted system. So as long as you're throwing stuff in there, yes, you might miss some things, but when you come back eventually, if what's the... like Amish people, when they get to a certain age, go on like Rumspringa. And that's what I do in my head, is like, I'll just go off away from the farm or whatever, spend some time, and then I'll come back eventually like, all right, now I need to do my review.
It's funny you say that. I really wish that I did allow myself to do more of that. Just check out for a day and go just focus on that aspect of, because we really don't do that as humans. At least I know I don't, and I don't know many people that, I can't even tell you one person I know of that does that, that allows themselves time to, sure, people go on vacation and they do stuff like that, but they're with their significant other, they've got plans, they fill every minute with an activity. That's not really what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is just, you don't have to be a Buddhist monk, but at the same time, just allowing yourself some time to get away and focus on that stuff. Yeah.
If you want nothing, if you want something. Yeah. But yeah, it's always very comforting to me that I have something to come back to. And so that I would say capturing is the most important thing, because we've talked about GTD. I don't know, this is probably the third or fourth episode we've done, but I wouldn't want people to get the impression that it's like, oh, I follow this to the letter and I never miss a day and that kind of stuff, because I do all the time. And David Allen talks about that. Like, he will miss time, and as long as you come back to it, several times I've heard videos and quotes from him of how to get back into it, and he's always very supportive of that. Like, hey, sometimes it doesn't work out, you got to do this thing, and life gets in the way, which happens. So, well,
an example just in my life between Kelly and I is that I've been pushing her for years to get her TSA pre thing done, because I fly more than she does, and I love it. It's just great. I don't have to take off my shoes or my belt or take my computer out of my bag. It's wonderful. Yeah. It's worth the $75. However, now we're on one of those points cards, and one of the benefits of it is you get free TSA pre.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
You can go down there, and basically you have to pay with the card, and then they give you credit for it later, but it's still technically free. And even with that, for the last year, she's still hasn't. And it's like I remind her all the time, like, hey, when are you going to do that? She's like, oh yeah, I need to do that. But you know it's in her mind bothering her because because I know I continue to tell her about it, and I'm sure she's still thinking about it. But now, we're a few weeks out from something we want to go to, and I'm like, hey,
it's time.
Remember that TSA pre thing?
Yeah.
You really need to do that.
Right.
So now she's kind of on board with doing it, and we were walking the other morning. She's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to call today. And she told me that literally like 2 days ago. And I said, you know what? I'm going to send you an email right now. Yep. And I did that. We were walking, and I sent her an email, and I said, do the TSA pre thing. And she did that same day. But it's because she had that stake in the ground.
Yeah.
And she got mad that I was going to send her an email about it. But, hey.
Help me help you.
Right. And that's really what I wish I could relay that to her, but I'm never going to be able to do that because of our relationship. It's just a husband-wife thing. You're always going to look at the other person as picking on you or wanting you to do something different, and you're going to, yeah. It's like a parent telling you something
exactly.
too, you really have to find that for yourself, but I wish someone could kind of instill that in her that, and she does make lists from time to time, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But she just doesn't really have that capturing type of element to her thought process. And that's what we're talking about. I really want to drive that home is that just writing everything down that has your attention and taking a look at it.
Well, I mean, our brains are, and he talks about this in the book, our brains are really good at thinking and planning, and they're crap at remembering. Some people have a really great memory, but even if you ask those people, they would realize that, no, your brain is not good at reminding you for specific things. It's why people set timers. It's why you have an alarm in the morning. It's why everything revolves around calendars and things like that, because your brain is really crap at remembering it when you need it. You can always remember it like, oh, God, I forgot to call TSA. But, you can't remember that morning when you get in. That's right, I need to call TSA. So like that email, like you said, it just plants that stake in the ground. And I send myself email all the time. Whenever I'm thinking about something, I'll just jot an email down or put it in a note app or something.
That's my process too. And just to get into that a little bit, how I capture stuff, I either open up the OmniFocus app and I tap the inbox icon in the lower right, because it's great on the app on my iPhone because the app doesn't have to completely load, and it always loads in the last place you were looking. So if I was looking at a project, for a reminder of something, it would come up and load in that place. So to get back to the inbox, I have to scroll back a couple screens, but there's a button, which is pretty cool. So I just hit that and I start typing, and that immediately puts that action in my inbox, and it puts that stake in the ground. So I continually at least go in and review that inbox. Yeah. So that's one method. And then the second is I will use the Notes app when I'm kind of brainstorming stuff. It's weird how I do that, though, because what I do is just copy it later and put it into an inbox thing. But it's like sometimes my brain doesn't think that way, and I'll just go, oh, notes. I just got to take a note.
Right.
So it's more of a immediate kind of thing for me.
It's like taking a picture.
Yeah.
You need to get the camera
up
right
and I do that
now.
too.
Yep. I go through photos a lot. It's just a lot easier to capture stuff. Through photo, you can zoom in and look at, nowadays with the cameras being as high quality they are, you can take a picture of a whole piece of paper and zoom in as much as you want.
Well, and then the last method I use is just a standard notebook in my pocket and a pen. And I can't tell you how much I write stuff down like that too. So just those three methods capture everything that I usually have to do, and including the phone, because that's, including the photo app, because that's huge for me too.
Yeah.
I will take a photo of something so I remember to do it later, or rather than documenting a model number or a phone number or something, just take a picture of it. Yep. So, and again, you just have to be, diligent about going back and looking at those things.
Right. And it's the going back that I will make the time for when everything, I always think of it as like storm clouds in the brain. When I'm feeling like that, I know, okay, I need to block out some time to just go through some stuff. Even if it doesn't have to do with the thing I'm working on, the fact that I can get my house in order on other stuff makes me a little bit more mentally prepared to deal with whatever the thing is, which I think helps, because it is your brain picking at you about little stuff, like you said. It's like with Kelly's thing, it is nagging, but it's a little tiny thing that you might not notice. And a bunch of those little tiny things, eventually you're like, wow, this is getting overwhelming. And it really brings on, for a lot of people, it brings on anxiety, or they'll get kind of, and I don't want to say depressed, but like bummed out about, hey, I haven't been doing a good job doing this. And so
I've got too much to do.
Right. And that email that you talked about from David Allen, it's like, just do one thing.
Yeah.
If you do nothing else, just do one thing. And you'll find that I always have this rule for myself when I'm cleaning something, that I'll like, I don't feel like cleaning the living room right now. I'll spend 5 minutes Say after 5 minutes, if you don't feel like doing it, just stop.
That's a good philosophy.
You never stop. You always keep going, because when you're 5 minutes in, you're like, well, I might as well finish it now. And it takes like 15 minutes and then you're done. But it's that initial like giving yourself the out of like, I'm going to sit down to do this review. And if I get bogged down or I got to jump off, I'll jump off. And more often than not, you're like, nah, I'm going to finish it because I'm already here. And before you know it, you're going to be done with your review for the day. And you're like, wow, I got less stuff in my OmniFocus than I thought.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that for sure, of not wanting to start things. So, yeah, I agree. I like that rule, too, of just giving yourself 5 minutes to start something.
I need to do that on my review, because OmniFocus tracks the last time you did your review, and I'm dreading even clicking the review tab to see when that was.
I don't have to click that off.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah, I know, man. Yeah, I mean, like I said, we talk about this stuff, but we're also human beings just like everybody else out there. So,
I mean, just as much as the stuff that gets done, I have things that don't get done. I'm pretty sure I have ordered Christmas cards for 2017 somewhere in my OmniFocus inbox. You know, stuff like that is like, it just doesn't, some stuff doesn't get done. But on the whole, I think if you can recenter and focus yourself, it'll help.
And it always feels really good to complete stuff, too, when you have a stake in the ground for it.
Like checklist, step one, make checklist, check it off. Done,
yeah.
You know?
Sometimes I'm guilty of that. I'll get my notebook out and write my stuff down for the day, and I'll purposely write stuff that I've already done just so I can cross it out.
Check.
Okay, I've already
whipping it today.
Oh, man, yeah, woo! But, you know, that'll happen when I've got something that keeps me busy in the morning, and then I don't get the chance to sit down and start writing until later. But I do like I save those notebooks, and I don't really go back much and look at them. But that's one of the reasons I do that too, is just kind of to give me an idea of what I did that day. So,
well, and we've talked about that, I think, in an article or maybe on a podcast of like going back to those notebooks is great, because you could flip it open and look at something and realize, man, that was like the utmost importance at that day, and now I don't even think about it because it doesn't even matter.
Well, it's funny you say that, because this just popped into my head. So I just rearranged some stuff in my office. I purged a lot of stuff. I got rid of it. It felt great.
Oh, I bet.
But one of the things I threw away are these, because I've been writing in notebooks and journals like that for, 2 decades at least. So I found my notebooks that I'd been hanging on to from like 97, 98, and 99, 2000, like shit like that.
That's awesome.
And I went back and I looked at them, and I looked at what I had written to do that day, and I go, oh my God, my life was simple.
Yeah.
You know, it just makes you appreciate how easy it was, you know, back then. So one of these days, we're going to look back on 2018, and I'm going to go, whew, well, I hope I'll look back and go, man, my life was simple then, you know?
It is, on the whole, you know, you think about, like, what was the thing that was stressing you out a year ago? I have no idea.
Exactly.
Because I can't even think of the thing that was stressing me out a week ago. Because a lot of times your brain is really good at, like, psyching you up about, like, this is a huge deal.
Yeah.
And you're like, it's not actually that big of a deal.
Well, that's one thing that's helped me, and that goes back to kind of the Stoic philosophy stuff too, is that's helped me really not get so worked up about things in the moment, is that, just like you said, I mean, dude, in 2 days, it's not even gonna be as big of a deal as it was then. So, you know,
but that's hard to practice.
Oh, it's very hard.
And just like we talk about with GTD, you can say that, like, oh, you know, I practice stoicism, but hey, I have things that come up. I'm like, oh, I'm freaking out. I'm freaking out.
Yeah.
Grade A freak out right now.
Yeah.
But it's just how you perceive it later and how much you let it get to you then. And I fall into that cycle. And the best thing you can do is kind of like, it's like Neo in the Matrix. All you got to do is like wake yourself up and realize, oh, whoa, I'm in the cycle. I need to bounce out a little bit, take a look, and then we'll fix it.
Well, it's the only thing you can control is your reaction to something. You can't control the thing that happens or, you know, what happens to you. You can only control your reaction to it. So I keep falling back to that. I'm really trying to focus on that lately. But I'm guilty too of not doing that. So I have gotten better though. I mean, if I compare, you know, 2 years ago me to me today, like I'm much better with that kind of stuff too. I still get worked up, but you know, it's definitely a different feeling, I guess.
Sure.
Sometimes. So
it turns into getting most things done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm getting old now, so you know, read the paper and water the lawn, feed the dog.
Yell at kids driving too fast.
I have done that. I Thanks for listening to Gear Tasting Radio. Remember, if you have questions, use the # Gear Tasting on any social media network, and we will find them and get them answered for you. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts if you're there listening to us or you've downloaded it from Apple Podcasts. Leaving a rating while you're there and a review would really help us out. Hopefully it's a 5-star review. I say that every time, but I know you love us. It helps Apple show our podcast to other people that normally wouldn't see it, so it'll help us out. Last but not least, check out our Crew Leader membership linked in the episode intel. Within the podcast itself, we list that stuff, as well as on our website, itstactical.com. But the Crew Leader membership allows us to give you back something in return for your support of the show. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.